Imagine a book that behaves like a labyrinth. You open it expecting stories, and instead you find mirrors that reflect mirrors, corridors that look back into their own blueprints, and quiet narrators who talk like librarians while smuggling cosmic dynamite under the desk. Fictions isn't one tale, it's a set of carefully cut keys that all open the same locked door. Reality, once examined, is less solid than we pretend. The experience is less like reading a collection and more like wandering through a museum where the exhibits keep rearranging themselves. Borges writes with the calm precision of a scholar and the mischief of a magician. He'll cite invented texts, summarize non-existent books, and describe imaginary historians with the seriousness of a footnote. That style isn't decoration, it's the method. He makes fiction wear the mask of non-fiction so you'll realize how often truth is just a story that learned to sound official. In Borges' hands, credibility becomes a costume that anyone or anything can put on. The collection splits into two parts, the garden of forking paths and artifices, but the obsession is consistent: time, identity, infinity, authorship, and the strange vulnerability of knowledge. Over and over, Borges asks, if the world is made of symbols, who's doing the writing, and who's being written? Even when the plots change, the same metaphysical pressure keeps building under the surface. One of the book's signature moves is the false document, a review of a book that doesn't exist, a scholarly note about a fabricated source, a biography of someone too impossible to have lived. Symbolically, this is Borges saying, the library, our storehouse of facts, is also a factory for illusions. The paper looks the same either way. He's training you to distrust form and pay attention to the power that form can carry. In Tlan, Akbar, Orbis Tertius, Borges begins with a small oddity in an encyclopedia, an entry that shouldn't be there. That tiny error becomes a crack in the wall, and through it pours a whole invented world, Tlan, complete with its own philosophy, language, and metaphysics. What starts as a curiosity turns into a slow infection of the real. The horror and thrill of Tlan is that the fake world starts winning. Objects from Tlan appear. Scholars prefer it. People adopt it. Symbolism-wise, Tlan is ideology with a perfect user interface, a system so elegant it seduces reality into copying it. Borges is warning, softly, politely, that human beings don't just live in worlds, we live in descriptions of worlds, and the description can replace the thing. It's a story about how consensus can manufacture truth, one attractive idea at a time. Time becomes a weapon in The Garden of Forking Paths, where a spy story opens into a metaphysical revelation, a novel that is also a maze, a book where every possible choice happens. Not one timeline, but a branching universe of alternatives. The suspense isn't only about who dies or escapes, but about how reality itself could be structured. That garden is a symbol of time as multiplicity. Instead of a single fate, there are countless parallel outcomes, some tiny, some catastrophic, coexisting like paths in tall grass. Borges makes destiny feel less like a line and more like a library shelf, all versions filed neatly, equally real, waiting to be read. It's a metaphor that makes regret, chance, and possibility feel simultaneously comforting and cruel. In Pierre Menard, author of the Quixote, Borges performs a prank with serious consequences. Menard doesn't copy Cervantes, he attempts to write Don Quixote again, word for word, as himself. The text is identical. The meaning isn't. Borges uses this joke to show that interpretation is never neutral, because readers carry history into every line. Here Borges detonates the idea of authorship. The same sentence, written in a different century, becomes a different creature. Symbolism, the author is not just a person, but a context machine. Meaning isn't stored in words alone, it's stored in time, culture, expectation, everything that surrounds the ink. The story is also a sly critique of literary criticism, which can discover profundity by changing the frame. The Library of Babel is one of Borges' central cathedrals. He imagines the universe as an infinite library containing every possible book made from a fixed set of letters, therefore every truth, every lie, every prophecy, every biography of you, every refutation of that biography, and oceans of nonsense. The librarians who inhabit it live inside an information cosmos with no map. The library symbolizes total information and total despair. If everything exists somewhere, then knowledge becomes a needle in an infinite haystack. People form sects, hunt for the book of books, worship indexes, go mad. Borges captures a modern anxiety before it had a name, the terror that more information doesn't automatically mean more understanding. The story also suggests that meaning might be less found than made through human choices and filters. In The Lottery in Babylon, chance becomes government. A lottery expands until it runs society itself, reward, punishment, identity, fate handed out by a system that becomes indistinguishable from divine will. What begins as a game mutates into a total social operating system. The lottery is a symbol of the hidden machinery behind social life, bureaucracy dressed as destiny. Borges teases a scary possibility: maybe the order we feel is just randomness with better branding, and maybe we prefer it that way, because uncertainty is unbearable unless it wears a uniform. The tale keeps blurring whether the company is real, secret, everywhere, or simply another story people obey. The circular ruins turns creation into a dream. A man arrives at ruins determined to dream another man into existence, patiently, methodically, until the dreamed man walks into the world, unaware he's a fabrication. The tone is mystical, but the logic is chillingly precise. Then Borges twists the knife. The creator discovers he, too, is dreamed by another. Symbolism, identity is recursive. You are someone's idea, society's, histories, your parents, your own, and beneath that is the dread that there might not be a final, real self at the bottom, only layers of imagining. It's also a meditation on creators, artists, parents, gods, and the uneasy responsibility of making beings who will never know their origin. Funes the Memorious gives us a young man cursed with perfect memory. He remembers everything, every leaf's shape, every cloud's position, every moment with infinite detail. It sounds like a superpower until you see the cost. Borges frames him with a kind of awe that gradually turns into pity. Funes can't generalize. He can't think in categories because categories require forgetting differences. Symbolism, memory without abstraction is paralysis. Borges implies that to think is to compress the world, to commit small acts of violence against detail, useful, necessary lies that let us move. In that sense, forgetfulness becomes not a flaw but a mercy. Several stories circle violence and obsession: knife fights, rivalries, betrayals, sudden, clean endings. Borges often treats conflict like a ritual, people stepping into roles that feel pre-written, like old myths wearing modern clothes. The result is a world where brutality can feel fated, almost literary, even when it's intimate and ugly. That's a recurring theme: humans hunger for patterns so much we'll volunteer to become characters inside them. We'll treat coincidence like fate, biography like legend, and personal grudges like epic destiny, because meaning feels safer when it has a plot. Borges suggests we may fear randomness less than we fear a storyless life. Borges' narrators often behave like curators rather than protagonists. They summarize, cite, classify, and analyze. But that distance is part of the spell. It makes impossibilities feel properly archived, as if the universe itself has a catalog number. The voice convinces you first, and only afterward do you notice what you've agreed to believe. Symbolically, the narrator as librarian is Borges' emblem of the mind confronting infinity. We try to tame the untamable with labels. We build indexes against chaos. We turn the terrifying unknown into a shelf we can point to. Yet Borges also hints that classification is its own kind of fiction, a comforting grid laid over something that doesn't want to be squared. Mirrors and labyrinths keep returning because they're the perfect Borges symbols. The labyrinth stands for existence, complexity without a center, a structure that can be navigated but not mastered. The mirror stands for consciousness, reflection that multiplies the self, creating doubles, distortions, and the uneasy suspicion that I is just an image. Together they form a worldview where searching for truth changes the searcher. Another major symbol is the book itself, not just as an object, but as a world-making device. Borges treats texts as engines that generate realities, not mere records of them. A convincing idea can become a country, a forged encyclopedia can become history. In this sense, reading isn't passive, it's participation in what becomes real. Put all of this together and fiction starts to feel like a single argument made through many masks. Reality is not the opposite of fiction, it's one of fiction's most successful genres. Our lives are built out of stories, nations, religions, identities, even the self, stitched together until they feel inevitable. Borges keeps asking whether we can ever step outside the narratives that hold us. And the punchline, delivered without shouting, is that this isn't depressing, it's exhilarating. If the world is partly written, then reading matters. Interpretation matters. Attention matters. Borges invites you into the maze, hands you a lantern, and lets you realize the most dangerous thing in existence might be a well-crafted sentence. The collection leaves you feeling both more skeptical and more alive to the power of ideas. When you close Fictions, you're left with a pleasant, lingering unease, the suspicion that somewhere a library is quietly generating every version of you, every choice you didn't make, every truth you'll never find, and every lie that will someday pass for the real thing. And Borges, smiling faintly, has already filed that feeling under its proper title. The book's final effect is to make the everyday world look slightly stranger, like it's been edited, and the editor didn't sign their name. Give this video a like if you learned something new. Let us know in the comments which books you would like to see next and consider subscribing to see more. We will catch you in the next video.